Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello, and welcome to Getting to Know You. I'm Robert Jaquay, your host. Emergency medical services. One hopes we never have to use them. But if we do, Colonie has one of the finest EMS departments in the country. Today, we're going to be talking with Chief John Politis and Assistant Chief Jack Bevilacqua. So let's join them. I want to welcome you both, John and Jack, for coming today and being on our show. And I want to start with talking about emergency medical services in the town of Colonie. It's a huge service. And so can you give us some background, John, as to how it all started in the town of Colonie? And
it really started back in the 1960s with the rescue squads and voluntary ambulance services in the community, obtaining some of the first emergency medical technician training that was offered in the country. And Dr. Howard Westney, who was the medical advisor for the rescue squads in the 60s and 70s, trained the folks from the rescue squads to become paramedics, and people on the rescue squads in Colonie really became some of the first paramedics in the United States. Throughout the 70s and 80s, the rescue squads of Colonie did a terrific job of providing service to the community, but as our community has grown and has aged, the number of calls also grew, and by the early 1980s, the rescue squads and volunteer services in the community were very strained, and that brought about a consultant report and made the recommendation to consolidate what were the 6 volunteer rescue squads into a single municipal department, and Colonie EMS was created in 1989 by the consolidation of the volunteer ambulance services and rescue squads into the EMS department. At that time, we handled about 4,500 calls a year, or requests for assistance a year, and since that time, our call volume or requests for help has grown to close to 10,000 requests for help a year. We have a staff of about 70 paid staff, and we have a staff of about roughly 70 or so volunteers operating from 4 locations in the town, and provide round-the-clock service at the paramedic level to our citizens.
now I can only imagine you have to have special training to be able to do something like this. What kind of training do you have?
Well, there's 2 different levels of training. The emergency medical technicians we have about 110 hours of training, which is the equivalent of about a 6 credit hour course at most of the community colleges. And EMT is run by both Schenectady Community College and Hudson Valley Community College, and it's about a 6 credit hour course to the best of my knowledge. The paramedic program is about a 1.5 year educational program, which is the equivalent of pretty close to 40 college credit hours, and it is a certificate program with a degree-bearing option. EMTs are allowed to do non-invasive care. They can apply oxygen, assess people, measure vital signs, apply splints, and provide things that don't invade the body and don't provide definitive care. The paramedics, on the other hand, provide advanced level care, and they are allowed to start do intravenous injections, administer medications, assess a person's electrocardiogram, pace someone. And their scope of practice is essentially to help bring many of the things that are done in the emergency department right to a patient's home. And we're also allowed to administer pain medications, and we carry roughly 35 medications that we work with our medical director to administer to people who are in pain or have some other medical condition which requires a medication. So the level of care that we provide around the clock is at that paramedic level, and we have both EMTs and paramedics that work in the service, and it could be, in many cases, a mixture of both paid staff and volunteers that respond on a community ambulance. We have a mixture of rapid response vehicles, ambulances, and we do provide some rescue services within the community. We work very closely with our town fire departments to complement them on providing specialized rescue services for certain types of things, such as we're an integral part of the town's hazardous materials team with the West Albany Fire Department. We work with both Latham and Verdoy in providing technical rescue and confined space rescue. We also have a cooperative program with the New York State Police to provide a rescue helicopter for this region. Where we provide both scene medevac services, and we also provide specialized rescue services aboard the helicopter as a cooperative venture between the town of Colonie and the New York State Police, for which we actually bill people for that when we respond aboard the helicopter, and that's a significant revenue stream to our department and to the community, which pays for the program.
Do most cases, I'll call them cases, I guess for want of a better word, when you are called to a home, do most of them end up going to an emergency room, or are there a significant number that actually you can take care of? Can you take care of them right there in their home and have that be all that you do, or do you?
There is a small percentage, probably about 10% of our responses involve a non-transport, where a person either chooses to refuse care or we provide some care at the scene, and then they can be released. Generally, when we respond to someone, we always encourage medical follow-up, because our ability to do diagnostic testing in the field is not that of the emergency department physician in a hospital. And many medical conditions are subtle, and in missing something can have very serious consequences. So generally speaking, when we respond to somebody, we just about always encourage them to get further medical assessment and care. So, which is why only a small percentage result in a non-transport.
Okay. And in a transport, basically, once you get them into the ambulance, you're really a link also to the emergency room.
That's correct. The EMTs and paramedics have telecommunications ability to consult with the supervising physician, which we do right from the patient's bedside or from the roadside. We have extensive standing orders and protocols which, given certain medical conditions, direct the EMTs and paramedics and what kind of care is to be provided. There's a certain point in all of our protocols and procedures where a medical control consultation is required, where we need to talk to our supervising physician. As we've become more experienced with this over the last 30 years, the point at which we talk to a physician has been extended quite a long ways. Today, within our protocols within the community, we're allowed to administer most of our medications without consulting with a supervising physician. But at some point in time, we do have to call and talk to someone. Today, a lot of our medical oversight is done after the fact, with our medical supervisor reviewing the charts and making sure that the care that we provided was according to the standards.
Okay. Now, if someone needs, feels they need it, I mean, I can imagine hesitating, saying, is it really serious enough for me to call for, emergency medical service?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great question. Actually, I was sitting home last night around 10 o'clock, and my sister called me and said my mom, who's 86 years old, was having difficulty swallowing because she thought she had a piece of meat stuck in her throat and it was going up and down. And I immediately told her she needed to, after she hung up, to call 911. And she was somewhat aghast by that suggestion. Couldn't I drive 30 minutes to where she was to go check her out, and couldn't I bring my medical gear to do that? And fortunately, the situation resolved itself quickly. But the first thing that should be done when a person thinks they have a medical emergency is to dial 911. Commonly, we respond to circumstances where a person has a medical crisis, and their first action is to call a relative, and sometimes that delays getting help to the scene. Within our community, we are pretty fast and pretty consistent in our response to the community. Typically, from the time that you dial 911 until an emergency vehicle is at your door is someplace between 6 and 8 minutes. And as full partners in the emergency response in the community are the police department and also our volunteer fire departments in the community, who act as first responders. Both police and fire are often sent simultaneously with EMS department personnel to shorten the time to get help to somebody. There are a lot more police cars that we have on the road than we have ambulances on the road, and very often the closest help is a police officer with a first aid kit and their automatic defibrillator. And the fire departments play a key role as well. That about half of the fire departments in the town are medical first responders. So I would say, you know, in answer to your question, I would encourage anybody watching to show that if you think you're having a medical emergency, call 911. Get us en route right away. If you want to talk to a relative afterward, that's okay. But if something, you know, more significant happens, you know, over the next few minutes, at least we're en route at that point. The other thing I would say, and I think this is extremely important, is that our police, EMS, and our fire services in the community strive really hard to get there quickly and provide quality service. But very often, the millions of dollars that we spend in this community on emergency response is completely undone because we can't find you. And a common complaint of residents is that, hey, your ambulance drove by my house. And that's certainly legitimate, and I don't want to minimize that, but it is important to point out that many times it is difficult to find houses in our community because the numbering of the houses is not obvious. And if a house is set back off of the road or there are trees that have overgrown, we often can't find the house, and it results in us driving by places, and often we can be in the vicinity within a couple of minutes and then spend 10 minutes trying to find some place. You know, a couple of years ago, I responded on Christmas night to an emergency in one of the apartment complexes in the town. Was out at the apartment complex within 2 minutes and then spent 10 minutes trying to find the building. You know, that situation has since been resolved, but it plays out nearly every day in our emergency response where people are upset because we drove by them, but we can't find them because we can't find their house.
Now, when someone does call, they call 911, which is the important number to remember, and they have a conversation with somebody, usually basically establishing certain facts, or
Yep.
does their information automatically come up, hopefully, as far as address?
That's a great question. When you call 911, another thing that is sometimes misunderstood is that the dispatchers should be thought of as air traffic controllers of the ground, that they coordinate the emergency response resources, not only of EMS, but of police and fire as well. They're highly trained, and they operate using a program called Medical Priority Dispatch. So immediately they'll ask you who you are, where you're calling from, and the callback number. So in the event that we're disconnected for some reason, we can call back. The other thing is that many times the location that a person is calling from may be a little different than that of the actual emergency. That we might be calling from a neighbor's house, and the emergency could be a couple of doors away. Generally, the dispatchers are going to find out immediately who you are, where you're calling from, where the emergency is, and then they're going to ask you whether the person is, you know, conscious or are they breathing. And then based upon, and generally what their complaint is, what is sometimes not understood by the caller is that about that point, within about 45 seconds or so, the dispatcher is asking the person to go on hold, or another dispatcher is actually alerting a field unit that there is a call at a location.
Okay.
And is sending the unit. So the unit is typically en route within a short
already on its
period
way.
of time. It's on its way. And then they stay on the line with the caller to ask more questions to further define what the problem is. At that point, they can upgrade us, tell us to turn our lights and siren on, or to shut our lights and siren off based upon the answers to the questions. But I think probably the most important thing that the communicators do is to give people medical instructions over the telephone. And in a few minutes, you know, Assistant Chief Bevilacqua is going to talk about the CPR program. And sometimes members in the community need to be prompted. They may know how to do CPR, but it isn't until the communicator says to them, do you know how to do CPR, that the light bulb goes on that, hey, I need to do CPR here. So the dispatchers are given a very careful script to ask questions. They're also given a script on how to instruct people to give emergency care, stop bleeding, ventilate people, do CPR, and it's really important.
And I imagine in the course of that also to calm them down, because I'm sure there's a lot of panic and excitation that goes on as a result of having an emergency and not really thinking you know what to do.
Yeah, there can be. I mean, there certainly can be, and our communicators that work in the police department that are public safety dispatchers do a terrific job. And you know, they really are, we kind of consider it to be, we call it the 0-minute response time, that when you call 911, things are happening from the moment that that phone is picked up and said, 911, what is your emergency? They are sending us, getting us on our way, getting us to the right location, in asking questions and trying to provide instructions over the phone.
Now, this isn't only, meant to be home calls, actually, or I'm asking, I guess I'm asking the question, is it only for home calls, or what if you saw an automobile accident, something horrific, outside of your home, if you were en route somewhere? Should you call 911, and would that be something you'd respond to?
You should. The call, if it's called in on a cellular phone, it goes to this. It's routed initially through the state police, and then the state police determine the location and then route it to the appropriate dispatch center. So cellular 911 is very effective, and if you have an emergency, learn how to dial 911 on your cellular phone, and it'll get help to you. As you start to go, to areas away from, the suburban, urban areas, simply just greater time and distance, so it takes longer for help to get to you, and that's true across the country.
Right.
And people in rural areas aren't standing so close together, and it simply takes longer to get a response there. But get help en route right away. Rather than calling someone else, get help en route right away, and then if you need to call somebody.
Also, if you were in an office setting, like right here, you would do the same thing.
Yep.
One should be prompted to call 911,
Yes.
and if it looks like it needs. Now, you made reference to what is the most common call you get? Is there one, I should say?
Well, there's a mixture of trauma in medical emergencies that we see. We see a much smaller number of OB/GYN emergencies, much smaller number of pediatric emergencies, and probably medical emergencies, chest pain, breathing difficulty, abdominal pain, are all things that are probably, I would say, are some of our most common calls, as well as trauma in motor vehicle crashes. So it's a mixture of all of those. We have a measured response to calls based upon what our dispatcher tells us. We don't respond to every call with lights and siren. Usually the difference between going lights and siren and non-lights and siren is only a couple of minutes. It depends on traffic and time of day, but on calls that we can ascertain that are not extremely time sensitive, we tend to not respond with lights and siren because it increases the risk for everyone.
Sure.
And the risk is not only to the people aboard the ambulance, it's also to the public when we're responding lights and siren. On an average, we respond to the scene with lights and siren probably about 70% of the time. Once we're on the scene and we're starting to care for the patient, our EMTs and paramedics can assess the patient and know whether it requires a lights and siren response to the hospital. Going from scene to hospital, we only go lights and siren about 5% of the time. It's a very small percentage. Most of the time we're able to treat the person, care for their pain, deal with their medical conditions, so we turn it into something where seconds are essential, and we turn it into something where we can slow down a bit, and it's a lot more comfortable and safer for the patient, I would add.
Now, when we were talking about when you have a call and you go in and someone is on the phone, they're often given instructions, if it's a case that would require it, to do CPR. And one would like to think that everybody knows how to do it, but not everybody knows how to do it. And I'm sure, even though there's a skilled person, instructing somebody, it would be better if people had more, instruction or knew self-knowledge in terms of how to do it. And this leads me into what I want to talk about with Jack, and that is a new program, is it, called CPR Anytime, that actually is a program that will give people the ability to do CPR and learn truly in their own homes, right?
You're absolutely correct, Bob. The American Heart in 2005 did a lot of research on looking at what is important and what makes a difference for people who go into cardiac arrest. For us in the town, we have about a 10% citizen CPR rate. So out of an average year of 80 people that we actually respond to who are in cardiac arrest, about less than 8 for the year have citizen CPR. And knowing what we know now from the American Heart, that CPR means everything. Initial CPR, starting CPR, activation, they're all very important on the survival of that patient. For the year 2002, the American Heart reports that they had about 330,000 people go into cardiac arrest in the United States. That's about 900 a day. The big thing with this new program that we're going to introduce is about 60% of those actually are out of the hospital going to cardiac arrest, and 95% of that 60, almost 200,000 people, die inside their home. So the American Heart looked at this and said that we need to get people to do CPR. We know that makes a difference. Why aren't they doing it? Part of the problem is that the old CPR courses were 6 to 8 hours long.
Right.
Families, today's society, it's just hard to commit that amount of time. So they came out with this program called CPR Anytime. It's a 30-minute program that it's self-driven, self-learning, that you put in the DVD, you pull out your mannequin and you inflate it, and you just follow the DVD and follow along with the program. The benefit there is that they can take it home, they can replay it as many times as they need to, or they can share it with their family and friends so they can all learn CPR.
I'm going to bring out some props now because
Okay.
we have, you mentioned the mannequin, and here's our mannequin, and you can
This is
position that.
Yeah, this is a little inflatable mannequin that it's not perfect to real life, but it gives them an idea of what to expect, how hard to push, how to do an airway. The big key here is that they learn how to do CPR, that they learn to act, because majority of the time people are not. This year, for the year 2006, in the first quarter, out of approximately 40 cardiac arrests we've gone to, we only have one citizen CPR. And what I consider citizen CPRs, people who are not police, fire, and EMS, people who are on the street. And that happened to be that this one citizen CPR was a gentleman who used to be a volunteer firefighter in the town, who isn't currently right now, and passed this individual in the parking lot. But this is so important. And we recognize this here in the town of Colonie, so we're taking an initiative with the CPR Anytime program. What our goals are, or what we're trying to do is get one of these kits in every town, or correction, every home in the town. So that's about 30,000 kits we have to get out there. That's real aggressive.
Ambitious goal.
Yeah, very ambitious. But we want to try to measure to see if our goal is working, is increase our citizen CPR from our current 10% to 50% by the year 2008. That'll really show if CPR makes a difference within our community. And from the evidence American Heart is telling us, it should make a difference. How are we going to do this? We're looking about 80,000 people being trained, 30,000 homes. We started with this program. We initiated it. We're doing actual classes within the fire departments. They're scheduled and they're on our town website. And all the current classes that we're having are going to be on the website as we go along. Visiting the firehouses, getting into the community. You don't have to take a class in order to use this kit. You can actually purchase from our office, or you can take one of the classes that we're having, because the benefit of the class is that we can talk about our system, our town of Colonie, how they make differences, because in a DVD, you can't ask them a question.
Let me just stop you for a second. If someone does enroll in the class, do they get this kit as well as part of their enrollment?
Yes,
or
it costs, currently right now, it takes $30. You get this kit, we do the class for you, and you take it home. And again, you can use it, do it as many times as you want to, or bring it to your family and friends. And that's what I'm sort of like encouraging, is that one member of the family come, take the class, then you can ask the questions. Well, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to hold I can't get an airway, or where am I supposed to actually press, or how hard am I supposed to press? Those questions come up currently, or will I hurt somebody, or will I be sued? These are a lot of questions people have that we can answer them. Then they can bring that information back home to them, and then we're actually affecting a lot of people, not just the one.
So now, it's an ambitious project. A lot of people you want to, but you must be staging this in a certain way, in terms of the frequency you're offering the.
Currently, right now, we have every week, there's at least one class being offered in the fire departments, and that goes through the month of November. And then I'll be actually going to different groups, PTAs, civic groups, churches, to get the word out to them, give them a presentation, get them interested in helping themselves and the community to do this program, and then they'll be trying to offer classes. But again, if they don't want the class, they can just purchase the kit and then do it at home. But I would highly recommend that people, at least one person, take the class, because there's questions that people that they have.
So you're going to I'm hopefully that this program right now will help you in terms of promoting the program. How else are you going to promote it in terms of getting the word out to the public? Through the website you mentioned.
Through the website.
Will that be the town main page website, or will it be specific to the emergency medical services?
On the main page of the website, there's a link to CPR training, and this will be the classes that they're being offered are listed. Other than that is just going around to the different groups and trying to present the information and get them educated into what's needed, and so hopefully they'll all become contagious and actually want to learn CPR. It's going to be a long battle. Like I said, it's very aggressive. But I think we can do it, and this is very important. We're trying to make this one of the safest communities in the country. With a program like this and everybody knowing CPR, it's so important.
Now, is this unique to our community?
This is New York City started this program last year. They actually got a grant through some corporate sponsors to educate the school kids and programs in New York City. Seattle, Washington does a similar program. In this current area in the Capital District, we're the only one doing this program. But if you're not a resident, you can attend a class. With this education doesn't stop at the town of Colonie. We won't do classes outside the town, but outside residents can offer that. And then there may be businesses who want to actually sponsor courses and bring their employees in. That's a benefit, and then that can be spread out, and the word just becomes very contagious, and it goes crazy.
Now, I can imagine there's some people who would be reluctant, and what we are going to offer people who are watching today is about a 6-minute video, a little promo video that gives people sort of like the reasons why this is something they should engage in. So we're gonna break away from our conversation and watch that right now.
Across America, in cities and suburbs, urban or rural, a silent killer awaits. It happens without warning. It claims hundreds of thousands of lives each year. It knows no age, ethnicity, or gender. It is sudden cardiac arrest.
You ready to get beat, Dad?
In your dreams.
Chances are, at some
bring it
place,
on.
sometime,
Come on, stop playing
cardiovascular disease touched your life.
Hey, Dad, what's wrong?
My mother died when she was 42. She had a heart attack in the house.
My dad had a heart attack early on in his 30s, and I wasn't able to help him.
Sadly, less than 6.5% of cardiac arrest victims survive. Early CPR can help save lives, but only if more people learn how to do it.
335,000 people a year suffer from cardiac arrest. The amazing thing is that their survival rate actually doubles when CPR is done early.
It was a typical evening. Kate was, I guess, 3 months old, and we had just put her to bed. She was crying, as a baby does when she goes to bed, and she sort of abruptly stopped crying and sort of looked a little unusual, and I called Pam to come and take a look. At that point, she was sort of started losing color and turning blue. Pam had called 911 so quickly I hadn't even realized it.
EMS 8711.
And at that point, the 911 operator was live with us, and at the time she was sort of asking us questions and coaching me through the process of giving the baby the compressions. At the time, though, we were very panicked.
All right, ma'am, the ambulance is on their way. They'll be there shortly.
We took turns actually doing the CPR. The fireman arrived very quickly, and we kind of both stepped back, and he quickly checked her pulse and maintained CPR.
In Kate's situation, she needed to be defibrillated, so it was something that we could do until they arrived that kept her alive.
Of the 335,000 cardiac arrests that happen every year in the U.S., 80% of those happen at home. That means that if you're at home and you can actually start CPR right away, you can significantly improve your loved one's chance of survival.
Go phone 911.
Being able to perform the life-saving skills of CPR can save the life of a loved one.
When you do CPR, the purpose of it is to preserve brain function, preserve end organ function, and keep their body alive long enough so that we can do definitive care.
My name is Lieutenant Gary Miller. I'm with the New York City Fire Department, mobile CPR.
A traditional 4-hour CPR course isn't convenient for everyone. That's why Family and Friends CPR Anytime was created.
It's a new program developed by American Heart Association to teach the core skills of CPR in under half an hour.
Each kit contains a personal CPR mannequin, a CPR skills practice DVD, a resource booklet, and accessories.
Second breath.
Back to compressions.
It's a program that can be delivered by corporations, by schools, and by other institutions that can train a lot of people at one shot, and then they can take it out to their communities and teach their friends and families. So it's a great way for us to reach a lot of people in a short period of time.
Back to compressions. Ready? I want to hear those clicks.
The Fire Department of New York maintains its CPR program through grants and corporate sponsorships. Other communities can establish successful programs too.
Good job. Good job.
Time Warner Cable and FX Network gave $10,000 to the CPR Anytime program so they can get those resources out in the communities that need them.
As a result, the Fire Department of New York is able to offer CPR Anytime to 350 people a week in schools, community centers, and corporate settings, all free of charge.
The CPR Anytime program is important to Fox Cable Networks. It connects us to our community, it gives us good PR, and it's just a wonderful thing to do because it helps save lives.
One of the most important features of CPR Anytime is that it can be shared with loved ones.
So you want to take this kit and try and train other people. Pass it on. Pass on the information you learned today.
One kit can train a group of family and friends and dramatically increase the number of people trained in life-saving CPR.
I gotcha. Mwah. And 1, and 2, and 3, and...
Cardiac arrest nearly took Kate Thorpe's young life. Now a toddler, she is a vibrant picture of innocence, curiosity, and life.
She's terrific. She has a condition that's being treated now, and she's just doing wonderfully. In the light of the moon. She's a normal, happy, healthy, almost 2-year-old. So she's, you know, doing all the things that 2-year-olds do, and she's just fantastic. We're very, very lucky. Back to the house for lunch.
Supporting a CPR Anytime program today is a small investment that can make a huge impact on lives tomorrow.
One of the great things about this program is that it can be done in about 20 minutes. And up to this point, the shortest CPR program that we could do was about 3 hours. And it was much more difficult for people to take time out of their lives and to block out 3 hours. The CPR Family and Friends program, with the way this is done, can easily be done as part of a meeting that's going on, of civic groups. And it really is, I think, revolutionized the whole issue of CPR instruction to be done in the community. You know, and at this point, if anyone is watching a show who you know, is from a corporation in the town would like to, you know, provide us with you know, some support in terms of buying these kits, you know, we're again, you know, trying to spearhead the effort to get as many people in our community trained as CPR.
Certainly would go a long way in doing that.
And I think the carryover effect is not just for adults, but for infants and children as well. And you know, I think, you know, Jack has done a terrific job of spearheading this, of trying to get this into every home in the community. And if you're, doesn't matter what age you are, that, you know, really every home really needs to have people in it that are trained in CPR. You know, in addition to you know, heart attacks, which is certainly one of the more obvious things that we think about when it comes to, you know, sudden cardiac death or sudden death. There are many tragedies that occur not only in our community but communities around the capital region where, you know, people drown in backyard pools, people are suffocated, people are electrocuted, and it's very helpful to have someone there who can bridge the gap while you're waiting 6 to 8 minutes for EMS to arrive, to start opening the person's airway and start doing CPR, doing compressions. You just can't overemphasize the importance of that. And I think it also gives a person confidence in being able to respond to an emergency. So, you know, one of the things that's very tough on us as emergency responders is seeing the tragic things that we see day in and day out. And you know, I don't know too many people who have been doing this for any length of time who don't have some, you know, emotional scar tissue from the things that we've seen. Often, some of that scar tissue is from responding to some place where something could have been done and nothing was done, simply because no one knew what to do. And we get there, 6 or 7 minutes later, and unfortunately, the person has suffered, irreparable brain damage from not having CPR done on them, or having their airway opened, or things of that nature. So I think this is a terrific program, and we really, it's something, we've had a community CPR program for a long time, and we do community CPR classes, we've done them for a very long time, but it's never been this easy to do. And I think that's the key thing, that this is an easy program, it's within everybody's reach, and a spin-off benefit is with the small mannequin and the DVD. After one person takes the program, it can go into a home, and then others can watch the DVD and pump and blow into the mannequin and learn the essentials of CPR.
Well, I think it's a terrific program. I'm glad you're spearheading it, and I hope you reach your goal of getting everybody in the town to be able to participate in this. And I want to thank you both for coming today and giving us, information about the emergency medical services in general, and also about this vital program. So thanks again.
You're welcome, Bob.
And thanks for joining us on Getting to Know You. I hope you liked the show and found it informative, and hope you'll join us next week.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.